If you want to keep up to date with the latest channel activity, Destiny news, and dank memes, follow me on Twitter at rickakis. What is up, guys? Rickakis here, and today we are talking about weapon rerolling in Destiny, whether or not it should be brought back into the game, and if so, in what capacity. Now, I do want to remind you guys that this is a discussion of a complicated issue. I'm going to be examining both sides, and I can't properly examine this issue in the first 30 seconds, so please don't be one of those people that dislikes and makes an all caps lock comment within the first 30 seconds. Now, the real reason why I'm bringing up this topic is, firstly, I feel like, discussion should be encouraged in Destiny. It's how the game evolves. But secondly, I see this all the time in the comment section, like actually all the time. If you bring up problems, especially with the loot system in Destiny, you say, the loot system can get kind of bland, such and such isn't very good, whatever. I often see a lot of people in the comment section saying, well, that's why they should bring back rerolling. This problem would be fixed if only they just brought back weapon rerolling into Destiny. Is that really the solution? Is weapon rerolling kind of like the catch-all solution to all problems within Destiny? I definitely wouldn't say that. But weapon rerolling was in the game in full capacity and then removed almost as suddenly. Was that maybe too quick of a solution to the problems of weapon rolling? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, firstly, I need to explain what exactly weapon rerolling is. I think a lot of people forget we have had a lot of Guardians join Destiny after the Taken King came out, especially since the Taken King and all of the DLCs in the original game were sold in a package. So, weapon rerolling was introduced with the House of Wolves expansion, and is kind of technically still in the game. It actually lets you completely reroll the perks on any usually legendary weapon that has the capability to reroll it. Now, what do I mean by it's still in the game? Well, you can, if you have a year 1 legendary weapon that had the ability to be rerolled, you can still take it to the gunsmith and still reroll it, as you're seeing here. So actually, if you go back and play, I made a video on this, the original Prison of Elders, you can get those OG year 1 weapons, and then you can actually still re-roll them to get the perfect rolls. And to get the perfect rolls is exactly what re-rolling was. You took your weapon to the gunsmith, you spent some resources on it, and you would get a completely another randomized roll. So you would just keep re-rolling and re-rolling and re-rolling until you got the perfect roll. Now, for some people this took 100 tries, for some people this took 2, there was still a lot of RNG involved, but it definitely gave you the opportunity, it definitely gave you much more of a chance to get the god roll on certain weapons than what there is right now in the game, which is just hope it drops again and then drops with the god roll. So that's what weapon rerolling was. Now let's talk about the good things that weapon rerolling caused. And even if you absolutely hate rerolling and you think that yes, absolutely it should have been removed from the game, I'm not necessarily saying it shouldn't have. I'm saying, it's kind of foolish to think that nothing good came from weapon rerolling. It was obviously added for a purpose. So the good things that came with weapon rerolling are, firstly, it made loot special initially. The keyword is initially there, but off the start, when the new DLC came out, when weapon rolling was just first initiated, again, it made loot very special and very desirable. And the reason is because when you got a certain piece of loot, you were ecstatic about it. You were so happy that you got, a hopscotch pilgrim, a high road soldier, whatever, because that meant you basically had access to the god roll, because you could just then, once you got that weapon, once you got the high road soldier, you could re-roll it and re-roll it until you got the perfect roll. So just getting it in the first place, getting your first weapon, was an absolutely awesome feeling, and it's something that now isn't really the case. Even if you open a Vanguard package and get an LDR, and you're kind of excited about getting an LDR, for goodness sakes, but you're not that excited because you gotta check the perks first, don't you? Because if it's a trash roll, it's getting dismantled almost immediately. And that is kind of an upside of weapon rerolling, is that it made loot, at least initially, it made getting that first weapon and you knew you had access to the god roll, it made that very special and very desirable. Another good thing that I think weapon rerolling caused is that it somewhat evened the playing field when it came to the Crucible. No longer could the extremely sweaty Crucible players with 1,000 hours and all of the god rolls, just pub stomp people, because now the casual players that they were used to destroying actually had access to the god rolls as well, and they could fight back a little bit better. And although some people may disagree with me on this, I do think it was kind of cool that at that time, PvP was basically teams of people going at each other with the absolute best of the best in terms of weaponry. So that was kind of a neat aspect of weapon rerolling. Unfortunately, we now have to talk about the downsides, because there are substantial downsides. And really the main downside, and the reason it got removed, was that weapon rerolling, and the reason I don't think it should return in its full capacity, is that weapon rerolling lowered diversity within Destiny. Now, for those of you who've stuck with my channel for a while, you know I think diversity is such a huge issue. It is the issue in any loot-based game. You gotta have, a lot of weapons, a lot of armor at your disposal, and you gotta have reason to use several different things. Weapon rerolling really didn't cause that. It actually limited the diversity in the game. Now, how did it do that? Well, it kind of really emphasized the problems with the Destiny loot system. I'm not gonna go off on a rant this time, I promise, but for those of you who may not know, Destiny kind of works on an archetype principle. The auto rifles, all the auto rifles in the game from the alpha until now, only fit into 3 damaging categories. There's the fast firing, low damage ones, there's the ones in the middle, and then there's the slow shooting, high damaging ones, okay? So when you had weapon rerolling, once you got just, a decent weapon, a decent legendary weapon in any one of those categories, let's say you got a decent, legendary, high damaging auto rifle, you rerolled it until you got the absolute god roll. Would you really use anything else? Like, would you really go after, another auto rifle of the same archetype that's really not going to be that different, spend all these resources re-rolling it just to get basically what you already have? So people, once they kind of got that god roll in the weapon that they were looking for, they ignored all of the other weapons in that category. And again, that really did lower diversity. Right now in the game, you do see every once in a while some random weapons being used. Someone whipping out a PDX 45, even though the 41 may be more meta or whatever, because they got a god roll on this random gun. Even though it may be kind of a non-meta gun, you get a god roll on these random weapons and you think, hey, you know what, this is a really good roll, I'm gonna try it out. And sometimes it is actually like a decently competitive weapon. So you see more variety nowadays without weapon rerolling than you did before, because before you would get kind of the best weapon, reroll it until you got the god roll, and you would ignore all other loot. Right now, we're still playing the game. People are still playing Destiny almost in its 3rd year after the Taken King, especially because they're trying to get, the god rolls. They're still trying to get the god roll Isoluna, the god roll Longbow Synthesis, all of that stuff. Whereas if weapon rerolling was still in the game, most players would have probably gotten those a long time ago and would just kind of be sitting there. And if you think you delete a lot of useless loot now, imagine if you already had the absolute god roll, of all those weapons. You'd be deleting absolutely everything, right? You wouldn't even be looking for anything, and that was one of the main problems rerolling caused. So at the end of the day, although weapon rerolling did add a few good things to Destiny, it just lowered people's desire to play and limited diversity, and therefore it was removed. But looking back, we kind of went, 0 to 100 back to 0 very quickly. There was no sort of weapon rerolling in the game until it was introduced in a full bore capacity. You could just take your weapon to the gunsmith for pretty limited resources, re-roll it like 10 times. That was pretty insane. And again, that's 0 to 100. It not even being in the game, then it being in the game in full capacity. And then right back to 0 when it was removed entirely. Is this really the way to go? because I think weapon rerolling should be introduced back into Destiny in a very limited capacity. I brought this up when I made my video about how to make the Cryptarch great again, but I really feel that leveling up the Cryptarch should be very similar to leveling up your Vanguard, where sometimes, like when you open a Vanguard package and get a Vanguard booster, when you open a Cryptarch package, you should get a reroll token, which simply lets you reroll a certain weapon. Now, why do I think that this is a good idea? I mean, I just went over the negatives of weapon rerolling. Well, if you award weapon rerolling, or if you have it in such a limited capacity, I mean, think of how often you actually get, faction boosters from the Crucible packages or from the Vanguard packages. Not very often. And having that in the Cryptarch packages, but just getting those reroll tokens and only getting access to one, if you are extremely lucky, maybe two, you're not going to have the same problems, because you're not going to be able to go to the gunsmith and reroll a weapon 10 times in a row right away. You are going to be getting very sparingly these reroll tokens. You have to level up your Cryptarch entirely, and then even then you have the chance to not get one at all. Therefore, you would be getting reroll tokens in such a limited capacity that they would in no way afflict the same downsides as weapon rerolling from the gunsmith did, while still actually increasing the upsides. Doing that would A, make the Cryptarch more useful again. Right now he's not in a great spot, but B, actually get one of the benefits of weapon rerolling, which is making loot special again. If you have access to the ability to re-roll weapons, even if it's such a limited way that, again, it's not going to warp any metas. There's just no way that getting it in that limited of a capacity will in any way inflict the downsides of weapon rerolling from the gunsmith. I just want to make that point because I had to argue with people last time, but there's just no way it's going to happen. But what it will do is introduce one of the benefits of weapon rerolling, which is making your gear special again, making those drops special again, because now when you get an LDR that with a trash roll, if it's your first LDR, you're probably not going to delete it, are you? Because now you're going to have access to reroll tokens, and every once in a while, once a week or something, you can go back and try to reroll your LDR and get something better. It basically lets you get another reward, of something you actually want. And this is actually very similar. That concept is something that Bungie is already doing in the fact that they're actually introducing with the Rise of Iron the ability to pick if you want, if you go to your faction because you've leveled it up, you actually get to choose between an armor package or a weapon package. That's kind of the same concept of what we're doing here. You actually get to have another chance. You actually get to invest in the loot that you actually want. And that's, again, the same thing that Bungie is already doing with choosing your packages. It's just kind of another way of doing that with these reroll tokens. So, in summary, weapon rerolling was a very interesting time for Destiny, and although it did have its benefits, in the end, the fact that it lowered diversity and kind of reduced player interest in the game as they got all of the best weapons means that it does make sense that it was removed. I do disagree with a lot of the people making comments that if it was introduced in full capacity, it would solve all these problems. It wouldn't. It would cause a lot of problems as well. However, just like Destiny went 0 to 100 to introducing it, removing it entirely, scrapping the whole idea, may not have been the best solution. I feel like it should be reintroduced in a very limited capacity with reroll tokens. Give players an extra chance at loot they actually want to get. It really will be no different than just making all players a little bit more lucky, and kind of reintroducing some of the benefits that rerolling caused, mainly actually making your loot special again, making getting an Isoluna for the first time or a Synthesis for the first time very special, because you now have access in a very limited capacity, but you still have access, to re-rolling that gun and having another crack at it. I think that would be a very good idea. Now, if you don't, feel free to disagree with me in the comment section down below. I would love to hear what you guys think on this issue. However, if you do think that this is a good idea, share this video, send it to a friend, tweet it out or something like that, and perhaps we can get something like this introduced. If not in the Rise of Iron, then definitely in a future update that hits Destiny. Now, that's it for the video, guys. Again, I hope you enjoyed. If you want to see more Destiny content similar to this, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. If you want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter. That's linked in the description down below, as is my Twitch channel, which you can also follow. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.